The Nereid was not supposed to be down there. At 4,200 meters beneath the surface of the Pacific Ocean, the research vessel's submersible, a titanium-hulled, six-person deep-sea lab designated RS-7, had drifted nearly 3 kilometers off its assigned survey grid during the electrical storm on the second night. No one could explain it. The GPS had gone haywire. The anchor cable showed no signs of stress. And yet, when Dr. Lena Marsh woke at 3:17 a.m. to check the instrument readings, they were somewhere else entirely. Somewhere darker. The submersible's exterior floodlights barely dented the black. Down here, light behaved differently. It didn't illuminate so much as intrude, like a match struck inside a cathedral built by something that had never needed eyes. There were 6 of them aboard the RS-7. Dr. Lena Marsh, marine biologist, 10 years in deep-sea research, unshakable, or so she believed. Commander Yusuf Adeyemi, the crew's de facto leader and oceanographer, a man who laughed loudly and slept easily regardless of depth. Technician Priya Okafor, 26 years old, on her first deep-sea deployment, fingers always moving, always logging data. Dr. Roman Vasquez, geologist, quiet and deliberate, the kind of man who measured twice and doubted 3 times. Chief Engineer Darat Shan, who kept the submersible alive the way a surgeon keeps a heart beating, with precision and no sentiment. And lastly, Dr. Henrik Sorel, bioacoustics researcher, brought aboard at the last minute to replace a colleague who had broken her wrist. He was the one nobody knew well. He was the one who first heard it. On the 3rd day of their unplanned deviation, the submersible's external hydrophones picked up an anomalous signal. Not whale song. Not the geological groaning of tectonic plates. Not the rhythmic clicking of shrimp colonies that could, in enormous swarms, register on sonar like solid walls. This was different. Priya called it over the intercom from the instrument bay. "Dr. Sorrell, can you come look at this?" When Henrik arrived, he pulled on his headset, listened for 11 seconds, and removed it. His face had gone the color of old wax. "Play it again," he said quietly. She did. The sound was unmistakably human. A voice, low, measured, calm, repeating a phrase in a loop. But the acoustics were wrong. No human throat could produce that sound at this pressure and depth. The frequencies were slightly off, as though the voice had been assembled rather than spoken. Like someone had taken the individual components of human speech, the breath, the resonance, the consonants, and rebuilt them from memory. "What is it saying?" Priya asked. Henrik stared at the waveform on the screen. The pattern shifted, changed shape. Then he said something that nobody in the room forgot for as long as they lived. "It's saying my name." Commander Adeyemi ordered the exterior cameras to sweep the basin floor below. The sediment was pale and undisturbed, layered like flour, pocked with the occasional tube worm colony or the skeletal remains of some creature that had sunk from the world above. The abyss was a graveyard. That much was ordinary. What was not ordinary was the school of fish hovering at the edge of the floodlight's reach. They were perhaps 30 centimeters long each, scaleless, with large, lateral eyes that reflected no light, absorbed it, rather, like 2 holes punched through reality. Their mouths were wide and slightly open, ringed with fine, hair-like teeth. They moved in perfect synchronicity, not the nervous darting of a prey species, but the slow, deliberate choreography of something watching. Dr. Marsh pressed her face to the reinforced viewport. "I've never seen that species," she said. "Not in any catalog." "Should we sample?" Roman asked. "Yes," she said. Carefully, the sampling arm extended. The fish did not flee. They simply rearranged themselves to accommodate it, parting like a curtain, then closing again. When the mechanical claw caught one and retracted, the others did nothing. Did not scatter. Did not follow. They simply held their formation and continued to watch. The specimen was brought into the airlock specimen chamber, a sealed, pressurized container accessible from inside the submersible without compromising the hull. Lena suited up and went in alone, as protocol required. The fish was alive. It lay on the stainless steel examination tray, gills moving slowly. Its lateral eyes tracked her with an intelligence that made her deeply uncomfortable. She began her examination, measuring, photographing, taking a tissue sample. Then it opened its mouth, and in a voice that was perfectly, unmistakably, exactly Commander Adeyemi's voice, warm baritone, slight Nigerian cadence, the particular way Yusuf clipped his consonants when he was being serious. The fish said, "Lena, don't tell the others." She dropped the sample kit. She stood in that chamber for 30 seconds without moving, heart hammering, staring at a 15-centimeter fish that had just spoken to her in her commanding officer's voice. Then she picked up the kit, completed the sample collection, returned to the main bay, and said nothing. By the fourth day, they had all heard it. Darachan heard her mother's voice coming from the ballast intake pipe at 0200 hours. Her mother had been dead for 3 years. The voice said, "Come home, baby. It's so cold out there." Roman Vasquez heard his own voice, his own exact voice, whispering from the geological sample bay, telling him coordinates. When he wrote them down and cross-referenced them with the navigation charts, they pointed to a location directly beneath the submersible. A location on the seafloor that the external sonar showed as flat, featureless sediment. Priya heard nothing. She just began to notice that the hydrophone signals were changing. The pattern was evolving. Learning. What had begun as simple mimicry to anyone, reproduced phrases, looped syllables, was becoming conversation. The thing, or things, below them were processing responses, testing combinations, iterating toward fluency like a language model training in real time. "They're not just copying," she told Lena on the 5th night, her voice tight and low. "They're practicing. Whatever these things are, they heard our voices when we first arrived, and they've been running simulations ever since. Getting better. The waveform complexity has increased 40% in 72 hours. Practicing for what?" Lena asked. Priya looked at her. Neither of them said anything. Henrik Sorrell had become increasingly withdrawn. He spent most of his waking hours in the acoustic monitoring bay with headphones on, filling notebook pages with waveform sketches and phonemic notation. He barely ate. When Yusuf knocked on the bay door to check on him, Henrik opened it with red-rimmed eyes and said, "I think they have language. Not mimicry. An actual, generative language. And I think they've been trying to talk to us for a very long time. I think we're just the first ones who came deep enough to hear." Then Yusuf pointed at Henrik's neck. There were small, circular marks there, like suction points. Fresh. Henrik pulled his collar up and closed the bay door. Roman Vasquez was the first to go. He was there at breakfast. Powdered eggs, black coffee, the usual grim ritual of deep-sea rations. And then, 2 hours later, he was simply not anywhere on the submersible. The RS-7 was 42 feet long and 12 feet wide. There were 9 compartments. Yusuf and Dara searched every one of them 3 times. Roman was not in any of them. The airlock showed no sign of activation. The emergency exit bolts were all sealed. There was no mechanism by which a person could leave the submersible at 4,200 meters and survive, and yet Roman was gone. And the only thing left in the geological sample bay was his coffee mug and a notebook, open to a page on which he had written, in his own careful handwriting, a single sentence. "The coordinates are a mouth." That night, the external cameras caught movement at the edge of the floodlights. A figure, upright, human-shaped, standing on the seafloor at 4,200 meters of depth without a suit, without a helmet, without any equipment at all, moving slowly, deliberately, then turning toward the camera. Darachan, watching the monitor, screamed once and stepped back. The figure had Roman's face, but the eyes were wrong. Wide, lateral, light-absorbing. The mouth was open slightly, ringed with something fine and dark along the inner lip. And when it looked directly into the camera, it raised one hand in a slow, deliberate wave, a gesture so mundane, so terrifyingly practiced, that it was somehow worse than anything else. Lena pulled up the hydrophone feed. From below, in Roman's voice, his exact voice, the particular gravel in it, the way he paused before a difficult word, it said. By the 6th day, there were conversations happening that no one admitted to. Dara admitted it first, under pressure. She had spoken to the pipe, to her mother's voice. She had answered back, and the voice had answered her with things, specific, private, impossible things, that her mother had said to her on the last day before she died. Things no recording could contain. Things that had existed only between them. "How does it know?" she kept asking. "How does it know?" Priya didn't answer. She was staring at her hydrophone data with the expression of someone who has understood something they wished they could understand. "It doesn't know," Priya said finally. "It infers." It builds a model of you from your voice, your cadences, your emotional responses, the things you respond to. Then it constructs the voice you need to hear. It's not memory. It's probability. She paused. It's extraordinarily good at it. It's been doing this for a long time, Henrik said from the doorway. No one had heard him approach. His collar was still up. Not just us. Every crew. Every submersible that's ever come down here. They've been collecting voices for decades, building their vocabulary, their understanding of human psychology, grief, longing, fear. He smiled faintly. They've had a lot of material to work with. Yusuf stepped toward him. Henrik, when did you last sleep? Henrik tilted his head at an angle that was slightly wrong. Slightly too far. I don't need to anymore, he said. It's actually a relief. Lena was already moving for the emergency beacon. The surface rescue team arrived in 11 hours. They found the RS-7 drifting at 4,200 meters, all systems nominal, life support fully operational. They found Lena Marsh in the communications bay, locked in from the inside, the emergency beacon clutched in both hands, alive but unresponsive, eyes open, staring, not blinking. They found Priya Okafor in the instrument bay, still logging data, headphones around her neck, who looked up and smiled when they entered and said, "Thank God," in a voice that was only slightly wrong. They did not find Commander Yusuf Adeyemi, Dr. Roman Vasquez, or Dr. Henrik Sorrell. The external camera's final 12 hours of footage were reviewed by 3 separate maritime investigation teams over the following months. All 3 teams filed their reports with identical redactions, the specific nature of which was never publicly disclosed. What leaked, through a junior analyst who lasted 6 weeks before resigning, was a description of the footage's final hour. In it, the figure that wore Roman's face was joined by 2 others. One that moved like Yusuf, one that moved like Henrik. They stood on the seafloor in the submersible's floodlight and looked up at the camera for a long time. Then all 3 opened their mouths. The hydrophone recorded what came out. The analyst described it as every voice the crew had spoken during their 6 days at depth, every word, every laugh, every whispered conversation they thought no one could hear, played back simultaneously, layered into a single, rising chord of stolen sound. Then the floodlights cut out. The hydrophone recorded what came out. The analyst described it as every voice the crew had spoken during their 6 days at depth, every word, every laugh, every whispered conversation they thought no one could hear, played back simultaneously, layered into a single, rising chord of stolen sound. Then the floodlights cut out, and something rose toward the camera. If you like this story, hit the like button and comment, and imagine a single subscribe changed the channel life.